My name is Noelle, and I'm a 40-year-old housewife with a life woven from love, struggle, and quiet resilience. Today, I want to share the story of my family, a tale that's both painfully ordinary and uniquely heart-wrenching. I'm married to a man my age, a steadfast but rigid soul, and together we have a daughter who recently celebrated her 16th birthday, a milestone that should have been joyous, but instead marked a turning point in our fractured home. I met my husband, James, during our college years, a time when life felt brimming with possibility. Our romance was unremarkable in its beginnings, stolen glances in lecture halls, late-night conversations over cheap coffee, and a love that bloomed swiftly. We married soon after graduation, our vows spoken with the naive hope that love alone could conquer all. But where I am impulsive and rough around the edges, James is meticulous to a fault. His obsession with order, how books must align perfectly on shelves, how cutlery must gleam in precise rows, bordered on compulsive. Even during our dating days, I felt a twinge of unease when he'd rearrange my desk or insist on refolding my clothes. Yet, I clung to the belief that marriage would soften our edges, that we'd mold each other into better versions of ourselves. Reality, however, was far less forgiving. After our wedding, James's need for control intensified. Our home became his domain, governed by unspoken rules I was expected to obey. Towels had to be folded in thirds, meals served at exact times, and even the way I vacuumed was subject to critique. No matter how hard I tried to adapt, his standards felt like moving targets. My patience, though vast, began to fray. We clashed often, our arguments escalating from quiet disagreements to shouting matches that left me drained. Each day blurred into the next, relentless cycle of chores and criticism, with no moment to catch my breath or reclaim my sense of self. 2 years into our marriage, our daughter, Lily, arrived, a beacon of hope in our stormy life. James was overjoyed, his face lighting up as he held her tiny form. I dared to believe that fatherhood might soften him, that Lily's presence would bring harmony to our home. For a brief moment, I felt unburdened, as if her laughter could mend our cracks. But that hope was short-lived. James's intolerance for disruption grew worse. When Lily cried at night, shattering his sacred routine, he'd snap, hurling harsh words at a defenseless infant. He declared child-rearing my sole responsibility, retreating into his world of order and leaving me to navigate motherhood alone. Countless times, I considered divorce, my heart heavy with resentment. But for Lily's sake, I stayed, gritting my teeth through each painful day, determined to shield her from the chaos of our marriage. As Lily grew, I prayed she'd inherit my spirit, my warmth, my resilience. To my relief, her features mirrored mine. The same hazel eyes, the same crooked smile. I thought that was enough, that her heart would follow suit. But by the time she was 10, I saw troubling signs. She began mimicking her father's fastidiousness, complaining about my cooking or throwing tantrums when her room wasn't arranged just so. As she entered her teenage years, her rebellion sharpened. She'd fling cruel words at me, her voice laced with disdain. When I pushed back, James inevitably took her side, their alliance a blade that cut deeper with every argument. I became the family's scapegoat, criticized from both sides, my efforts dismissed as inadequate. Then came the day that broke me. I woke feeling lethargic, my body heavy with a slight fever. Dizziness clouded my thoughts, and I could barely stand, collapsing into a chair after stumbling through the house. Despite my obvious distress, neither James nor Lily offered a kind word. Instead, James barked, "Where's my red tie? The one I wore 2 months ago?" Lily chimed in, "Mom, where are my socks? Did you even wash them?" Their demands, so trivial yet so relentless, drowned out my silent plea for care. I was invisible, reduced to a servant in my own home. Somehow, I mustered the strength to see them off, waving weakly as they left. Then, exhaustion claimed me. I collapsed in the hallway, my vision fading. When I awoke, I was on the living room couch, the familiar ceiling above me. I must have moved there instinctively. Though still weak, a strange calm settled over me, as if part of my mind lingered in the peace of sleep. I couldn't recall the last time I'd rested so deeply. Surrendering to that comfort, I drifted off again. When I woke next, darkness cloaked the house. The clock read past 5 in the evening, and panic surged through me. I hadn't done the laundry, cleaned, or prepared dinner, tasks that define my existence. Scrambling to the kitchen, I threw together a meal from leftovers, my hands trembling with urgency. Just then, Lily burst through the door. "Wait, you're still making dinner?" "That sucks," she said, her tone dripping with disappointment. I mumbled an apology, promising it would be ready soon, but she ignored me, retreating to her room. Moments later, James returned, his face darkening at the sight of me cooking.
"What?"
"You're still making dinner?" he said, his voice thick with irritation. His routine, changing clothes, eating precisely 15 minutes later, was sacrosanct, and I disrupted it. I had mere minutes to finish. I cooked frantically, chopping vegetables unevenly, seasoning haphazardly, desperate to avoid his wrath. I plated the food just as he emerged from his room, my body sagging with relief. But relief was fleeting. What the hell? Who could eat this? James exploded, his face contorted with rage. The stir-fry's overcooked, the color's off, and the vegetables aren't even cut uniformly. I stammered, "I'm sorry, I was pressed for time today." His response cut like a knife. "Time? You're not working. You have plenty of time." Those words, dismissing my every effort, ignited something within me. Before I knew it, I was screaming, my voice raw with years of suppressed pain. "Do you have any idea how much I struggle every day?" James recoiled, his eyes wide with shock. I pressed on, tears streaming down my face. "I was sick today, but I pushed through to make dinner, and you didn't even try it. How do you think that makes me feel?" My words hung in the air, heavy with truth. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But then he snapped, "Don't mess with me. Do you know how hard I work to support this family?" The argument escalated, each of us hurling accusations, until Lily burst from her room, shouting, "What are you doing? Your voices can be heard outside. Stop it." Her interruption silenced us. I explained what had happened, hoping she'd understand. But her response shattered me. "Honestly, Mom, you're the one who's wrong," she said coldly. "Housework is your job, isn't it? Dad can't take time off work, even when he's sick." James nodded, emboldened. "That's right. You're too lenient on yourself." Lily added, "Mom's always late with chores. You haven't even done the laundry today." Their words, a chorus of blame, crushed my spirit. "So, you're both saying I'm not trying hard enough?" I whispered. Lily's final blow was the deepest. "I bet we could manage without you, Mom." Those words echoed in my mind as I fled the house, barefoot and broken. I ended up in a dark park, collapsing onto a bench. My feet ached, my tears had dried, and my heart was a hollow shell. Their cruel dismissal replayed endlessly. Could they really cast me aside so easily? Resentment simmered within me, hardening into resolve. They would face consequences for trampling my feelings. The next morning, I returned home, my anger fueling a newfound purpose. I cleaned flawlessly, did the laundry with precision, and prepared a breakfast as lavish as a gourmet feast. When James and Lily entered the dining room, their faces froze at the sight of the extravagant spread. "Mom, what's going on?" Lily asked, wary. I smiled tightly. "Isn't it your 16th birthday today? Did you forget?" They exchanged uneasy glances, their movements stiff as they sat down. The meal was silent, their eyes darting to me, sensing something had shifted. Then I spoke. "Listen." Their expressions tensed. "Starting today, I'm leaving this house." Their faces paled. "Why?" Lily cried. "You said you could do the housework better than me," I replied, my voice steady. "And you, James, said I have all the time in the world." They stammered denials, but I cut them off. "I'm moving to another house. but I'll still come back sometimes. Lily's voice broke.
Stop.
It's my birthday. You're going to celebrate, right? I laughed, a hollow sound. I'm serious. As Lily crumpled, sobbing, I walked out, their screams fading behind me. I booked a hotel room nearby, then rented a modest apartment, filling it with essentials. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Lily, apologies, please, tears. James, stubborn as ever, sent accusatory texts, refusing to admit fault. I left them unread, a small act of defiance. 2 days later, I returned home briefly. Lily rushed to hug me, but I gently disentangled myself. The house was a mess. Convenience store wrappers littered the kitchen, unwashed laundry piled in the bathroom. They'd criticized my work, yet couldn't manage without me. James avoided my gaze, his pride unbroken. I left without a word. A week later, the house was worse. Garbage overflowed, and Lily's face was streaked with dirt, her hair tangled. James finally broke, kneeling amidst the mess. I'm sorry, he pleaded. I looked down at him, unmoved. Don't think an apology fixes this. Clean this house, or I'll divorce you. He scrambled to comply, but his efforts were clumsy. I stayed 3 days, directing them like a taskmaster until the house gleamed. Exhausted, they collapsed in the living room. Shall we continue the birthday party? I said cheerfully, my tone laced with irony. From that day, James took over the housework, and Lily aligned herself with me, her loyalty shifting. Those painful days were a crucible, forging a new dynamic in our home. But the scars remain, a reminder of the cost of my awakening. Now, the story shifts to Mary, a 55-year-old housewife whose heart aches with a different kind of betrayal. I am Mary, mother to 2 sons, David and Tom, whose paths have diverged as sharply as their personalities. David, my eldest, is a high-flying elite in Tokyo, his life polished and ambitious. Tom, quieter and introspective, works diligently at a manufacturing company in our hometown, content with a simpler existence. As children, they were inseparable, their laughter filling our modest home. But as they grew, David's disdain for Tom emerged, a cruel streak that manifested in public humiliations and relentless harassment at school. Despite my scoldings, David's behavior never changed, leaving Tom to bear the brunt of his brother's scorn. Recently, David announced his engagement to a woman from his company, a poised and driven professional. When he called to arrange a dinner for us to meet her, I felt a surge of relief, hoping this milestone might ease the tension between my sons. Tom declined to attend, and David seemed pleased by his absence. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant, its opulence disorienting to my husband, John, and me. David and his fiancée, Claire, were already seated when we arrived, their polished demeanor a stark contrast to our nervous fumbling. Hey, Mom, Dad, you're late, David said, his tone sharp. I apologized, explaining we'd gotten lost, but he waved it off. Don't embarrass me. His words stung, but I brushed them aside, accustomed to his bluntness. Over dinner, David dominated the conversation, praising Claire's perfectionism and ambition. She's different from you guys, he said repeatedly, his words laced with condescension. Claire, to her credit, tried to temper his remarks, but David was relentless, painting her as flawless while diminishing us. John grew uneasy, and I was grateful Tom wasn't there to endure this. Then came the bombshell. Please don't come to our wedding, David said, his voice cold. If you do, our relationship is over. Claire nodded, her eyes glistening with crocodile tears. I was stunned, my heart sinking. Why? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. I'm terrified of you guys, Claire said, her performance unconvincing. David added, You've always favored Tom over me. His accusation floored me. We'd protected Tom because of David's cruelty, but I hadn't realized David perceived it as favoritism. The dinner ended in tense silence, the rift between us wider than ever. Back home, David's plan unfolded. He and Claire moved into our house without permission, claiming our bedroom and acting as lords of the manor. David's harassment of Tom intensified, ordering him to do menial tasks like weeding the garden. Tom, with quiet dignity, refused, his maturity a rebuke to David's pettiness. One night, I overheard them plotting in the living room. "When will this house be ours?" Claire asked. David replied, "Soon. We just need a plan to get rid of them." Their callous scheme, to oust us and renovate our home, left me reeling. I confided in John and Tom, who proposed a strategy requiring patience but promising to remove David and Claire for good. We agreed to bide our time, acting as if nothing had changed. The wedding date was set at a lavish local venue, and David continued to needle Tom, though Tom's calm demeanor blunted his attacks. When they reiterated their demand that we not attend the wedding, I felt a mix of anger and resolve. Tom's plan was our lifeline, and I clung to it, determined to reclaim our home and our dignity. David's voice was cold and unyielding as he reiterated his ultimatum. "I'm telling you again, if you come to our wedding, our relationship is done. Isn't that what you want anyway? Don't you think I'm your horrible son, unlike Tom, who can't do anything wrong?" He jabbed a finger toward his younger brother, his face twisted with resentment. Tom stood silent, his expression a mix of hurt and resignation, unable to find words to counter the accusation. My patience, stretched thin by years of David's hostility, finally snapped. "That's enough, David," I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. "You've been bullying Tom your entire life. Why do you act this way? You're brothers, siblings meant to support each other. Stop treating him like he's beneath you." David and his fiancée, Claire, turned their attention to me, their eyes narrowing. David's voice dripped with venom as he shot back, "You can't say anything about me. You were fooled by Tom's fake innocence and spoiled him rotten. You've always treated me differently. That's because you tormented your brother." I countered, my heart pounding. How else were we supposed to react when you humiliated him at every turn? "Isn't that just an excuse?" David sneered. "You couldn't help yourself because Tom was so cute, so perfect. Admit it, you loved him more." His words cut deeply, twisting a truth I'd never acknowledged. "That's not true," I insisted, my voice faltering. But David refused to listen, shutting me out despite my desperate attempts to explain that my protectiveness stemmed from his own cruelty, not favoritism. Why couldn't he see it? Why wouldn't he reflect on his actions? The realization hit me like a wave. David, my son, was unreachable. Though I felt a mother's duty to care for him, even through his selfishness, I could no longer bear the weight of his resentment. In that moment, I made a heart-wrenching decision. I would let him go. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "I won't attend your wedding." Tom and my husband, John, stared at me with wide, disbelieving eyes, while David and Claire exchanged satisfied glances. "You're sure about this?" David asked, his tone mocking. "You'll regret it." "No, we won't," I replied, forcing conviction into my words. "The best weddings are free of distractions, aren't they?" Their smug expressions hid a cruel joy, while our hearts, mine, John's and Tom's, sank under the weight of a fractured family. We didn't need to attend a wedding where we were so clearly unwanted. No invitation had been extended, and even if we'd tried, we'd likely be turned away at the door. David's contentment was palpable, but he was oblivious to the consequences brewing beneath the surface. Tom's plan, a quiet strategy we'd agreed to, flickered in my mind, and I found a grim amusement in anticipating its unfolding. The wedding passed without incident, a lavish affair we only heard about through distant relatives. David and Claire continued living in our home, having recently changed jobs to be closer to the house. Their days were consumed with packing and settling into their new office roles, but their presence in our home felt increasingly oppressive, like uninvited guests claiming ownership. One evening, after their first day at the new office, they returned in a panic, their faces pale as they confronted Tom. "Tom, what's going on?" David demanded, his voice edged with disbelief. When I pressed them for details, Claire stammered through an explanation. At their new workplace, during a tour of the company, they'd spotted Tom, someone they believed had no business being there. Their boss, noticing Tom, bowed deeply and said, "Thank you for all your help." He introduced Tom as the president of a key client company, a revelation that left David and Claire stunned. They'd always dismissed Tom as a lowly factory worker, never imagining he held such a prestigious position. Unbeknownst to them, Tom's journey had been one of quiet determination. Since joining the factory, he'd worked tirelessly, his diligence earning the respect of the company's president. Tom's innovative ideas transformed the factory's operations, making him indispensable. As the factory's performance soared, it became a vital supplier for numerous companies across Japan. When the president fell ill, Tom's loyalty shone through. He visited regularly, offering support. Moved by Tom's dedication, the president named him his successor. Though Tom initially protested, deeming himself unworthy, the encouragement of his colleagues and the president's faith propelled him to accept. Under Tom's leadership, the factory flourished, earning him widespread recognition, even among Tokyo's corporate giants. That day, Tom had been at the company for a routine client meeting, a coincidence that shattered David and Claire's assumptions. Their shock turned to anger. "You cheated," David roared, grabbing Tom's arm. "You've always been like that. Why didn't you tell us?" Claire, tears streaming down her face, wailed, "If you told us, we wouldn't have acted this way." The irony was almost laughable. Tom, unfazed, replied calmly, "I reached this position through my own abilities. Why are you so angry?" David's rage flared at Tom's composure. "Don't act so smug," he shouted. But Tom, with a steady voice, said, "I have something else to share, something more important." We managed to calm David and Claire, urging them to sit. Tom retrieved a folder from his room and began his revelation. "First, look at these," he said, spreading several photographs across the table. The images showed Claire with a well-dressed man, captured in intimate moments that unmistakably pointed to an affair. David's face drained of color as he shouted, "What is this?" Claire trembled, unable to meet his gaze. "I investigated her because she was to be my sister-in-law," Tom explained. "This evidence is undeniable." Claire had bowed, whispered, "I'm sorry." David, reeling from betrayal, stood frozen. Tom's voice softened, but carried a sharp edge. "This is what happens when you judge people by appearances. No one is perfect." A chuckle escaped my lips, echoed by John's, as we watched David's world crumble. He sank to his knees, despair etched into his features, while Claire's apologies filled the silence. In the aftermath, David and Claire divorced. David, too proud to forgive infidelity, demanded alimony, which Claire paid with her parents' help. But the wounds ran deep. Devastated, David quit his job and withdrew into his room, emerging only for meals. When Tom was present, he'd shrink away, fear flickering in his eyes. Our family debated David's fate, ultimately agreeing to sever ties. It was a painful choice, but his selfishness had eroded our capacity for forgiveness. Months later, we asked David to leave. He pleaded for mercy, tears streaming down his face, but to me, he was no longer family. His departure felt like a natural consequence. John, Tom, and I now live unburdened, our home peaceful. John has retired, but Tom's success ensures our financial stability. Tom's upcoming wedding to a kind colleague fills me with hope. I eagerly await the day I'll celebrate my precious son's happiness, determined to see him build the family he deserves. My name is Natalie Watson, and at 29, I'm navigating a life reshaped by betrayal and newfound freedom. For 3 years, I shared a modest apartment with my husband, Mark, in a marriage that was mostly harmonious, until it wasn't. My discontent grew not only from Mark's indifference, but from the suffocating expectations of his parents, whose influence loomed large over our lives. Mark maintained a close bond with them, and we visited their home weekly. Initially, I admired his devotion, thinking, he's such a filial son. But each visit chipped away at my patience. Mark's parents, particularly his mother, relentlessly questioned my choices. "Natalie, when will you quit your job?" they'd ask. A woman's place is in the home. Their words grated against my love for my career, a fulfilling role I'd vowed to keep before marrying Mark. I'd shared my ambitions with him, yet during these interrogations, he'd avoid my gaze, acting as if their comments were irrelevant. My dread of those visits deepened, and I began suggesting Mark go alone. "My parents want to see you too," he'd insist, dragging me along despite my protests. Resigned, I went, swallowing my frustration to avoid hurting him, smiling through their jabs while inwardly seething. Worse was their obsession with our childlessness. "Why don't you have a child yet?" they'd probe, their tones accusatory. I adored children and hoped to have one someday, but their pressure felt invasive, as if a child was owed to them rather than a personal choice. The idea of conceiving just to appease them repulsed me. I confided in Mark, begging him to intervene, but he brushed it off. "Don't worry about it. You're overreacting," he'd say, leaving me to face their scrutiny alone. My resentment grew, a silent storm building within me. Then came the comment that shattered my restraint. During one visit, Mark's mother asked, "Are you infertile, since you still haven't had a child?" His father piled on, glaring at me like a judge. "Did you hide your infertility and trap our son?" Their words were a slap, stripping away my dignity. I dropped my forced smile and snapped, "I'll undergo infertility treatment. In return, promise never to mention this again." My own boldness startled me, revealing the depth of my stress. To my surprise, Mark spoke up. "We don't need treatments. We're young, and there's no rush. I want to enjoy our time as a couple." His firmness seemed protective, and for a moment, I believed he was defending me. Emboldened by his stance, I took a weekday off to visit a gynecologist, driven by a need to silence my in-laws' doubts. I went alone, as Mark grew moody whenever I mentioned fertility tests. The exam was swift, with results due in a week. Leaving the clinic, I locked eyes with a pregnant woman in the waiting room. Recognition dawned. She was Claire, my classmate from elementary and middle school. Her belly was round with her 9th-month pregnancy, and after confirming each other's identities, I walked her home, catching up on old times. Claire lived near me, and I was stunned to learn her husband worked at Mark's company. As we chatted, my gaze drifted to her belly. Noticing, she invited me to touch it. "Is it okay?" I asked. "Of course," she smiled. Feeling the gentle kick of her baby filled me with awe, a mix of envy and wonder. "I'm jealous," I blurted, instantly regretting it. Claire, perceptive, sensed my unease. "Did something happen?" she asked gently. Hesitant at first, I poured out my frustrations, my in-laws' pressure, Mark's indifference, and the fertility test I'd just taken. Speaking to her unburdened me, as if years of pent-up stress dissolved in her quiet listening. "You've endured so much," Claire said. "If it were me, I'd have cut ties with them." Her words validated my pain, and I laughed lightly, saying, "At least Mark stood up for me." But Claire's expression darkened. "About your husband," she said hesitantly. "It might be best not to tell him about the test." Confused, I pressed her, and she revealed a shocking truth. Stunned, I stumbled home, her words echoing in my mind. I didn't want to believe it, but doubts about Mark's behavior had been simmering. If Claire was right, I couldn't forgive him. I resolved to uncover the truth. Our next visit to Mark's parents was a test. As we sat over tea, his mother predictably asked, "When will you quit your job, Natalie?" Instead of my usual deflection, I replied, "I'll quit when we have a child." She blinked, delighted. "You're finally having a child?" His father chimed in. "Will I hold a grandchild soon?" Mark glanced at me, his face tightening. "Having a child is a blessing. It might not happen right away," he said evasively, as I'd anticipated. I seized the moment. "Actually, I visited a gynecologist recently," I said, producing my test results. "It shows no issues with me." Before Mark could respond, I added, "I'm starting to want a child too. You'll cooperate for your parents' sake, right?" His face flushed with panic. "I'm not doing infertility treatments, and I won't get tested," he yelled. His parents gasped, but I felt a cold clarity. Claire's warning was true. I pressed further. "Do you know Mr. Howard?" Mark's shock confirmed my suspicions. His wife, Claire, is my friend. She says you've been telling co-workers I'm infertile, a defective product who's abandoned womanhood for work, and that you're pitiful for marrying me. Mark's mouth trembled as he sputtered. So, what if it's true? Who else would want you? His cruelty extinguished any lingering affection. Pointing to the test results, I said, I've proven I'm not the problem. Could it be you're infertile, and that's why you refuse testing? His mother leapt in, red-faced. There's no way my son has issues. It's you. She tore up the results, claiming they were fake. Mark nodded, echoing her denial. Seeing no point in continuing, I slammed divorce papers onto the table. Then divorce me. Find a better wife. Fine, Mark shouted, furiously signing the papers. His parents didn't intervene. As he finished, I snatched the documents, said goodbye, and left without looking back. At City Hall, I submitted the papers swiftly. Days later, I moved into my company's dormitory, having secured the lease solely in my name. I packed Mark's belongings and shipped them to his parents' house, cash on delivery. As I settled into my new life, Mark called, yelling, "Why did you submit the divorce papers? Why did you move out?" I calmly explained he'd agreed to the divorce and that the apartment was mine. He rambled, demanding we remarry and live together, but I cut him off. "Don't call again," I said, hanging up. When he threatened to come to my workplace, I informed my boss, who dismissed the likelihood. But Mark caused a scene in the company lobby, restrained by security and escorted out by police. Mortified, I was comforted by colleagues who affirmed my decision. Claire's husband later revealed Mark had tried to vilify me at work, but his lies unraveled, forcing him to quit. Likely jobless and living with his parents, Mark's fate no longer concerned me. He was a stranger now. Free from stress, I thrive at work, with time and money to enjoy. I visit Claire, planning to spoil her newborn, and while remarriage isn't on my horizon, I dream of a happy family someday, and my name is Meg, and at 28, I awoke to a world I couldn't recognize. Lying in a hospital bed, my head throbbing beneath bandages, I struggled to piece together why I was there. Footsteps echoed, and a man stormed in, his face contorted with anger. "Meg, are you kidding me?" he shouted. "If you're awake, you're fine. Leave the hospital. This is such an overreaction, dragging me into your mess." His venomous tone shocked me, but more startling was my realization. I didn't know him. "Excuse me, who are you?" I asked, bewildered. His tirade continued until a nurse and security guard intervened, escorting him out. Still reeling, I saw my mother, Mary, enter, tears streaming down her face. "Meg, you're awake." "I'm so glad," she sobbed, enveloping me in a trembling embrace. My brother Jake, usually stoic, had red-rimmed eyes, and my father, Ken, stood behind them, his face etched with relief. They explained I'd been found collapsed outside my home, a concussion and a deep head wound requiring stitches. I'd lost significant blood, prompting a neighbor to call an ambulance. But their words stirred no memories. My mind was a blank slate, and the man's cruel outburst only deepened my confusion. "That's what my mother told me," I said, my voice trembling with confusion. "Mom, who was that aggressive man who came in earlier?" My family froze, their faces a mixture of shock and unease. An aggressive man? Now it was their turn to be puzzled. After a hushed conversation with the nurse and security guard who had escorted the stranger out, the truth emerged, hitting me like a thunderbolt. That man, Kevin, was supposedly my husband. Wait, I stammered, my mind reeling. "I'm married." The words felt foreign, as if they belonged to someone else's life. I had no memory of a husband, no trace of a wedding, no flicker of love. "Meg, are you serious?" my brother Jake asked, his brow furrowed with worry. "Why did I collapse in front of that house? That guy was yelling at me to leave the hospital right away." "My mother," Mary muttered. "Do you have amnesia?" Her voice was barely a whisper as she hurried to press the nurse call button. After explaining my disorientation, the medical staff whisked me into a series of tests, a whirlwind of scans and questions that stretched beyond a single day. Results wouldn't come immediately, leaving me in a fog of uncertainty. As I waited, my hospital room became a revolving door of visitors. Coworkers arrived with thoughtful gifts, my favorite snacks, vibrant flowers, baskets of fruit, and even personalized trinkets that hinted at friendships I couldn't recall. Their warmth was comforting, yet disorienting, as I struggled to connect their faces to my past. Friends came too, their eyes brimming with concern, sharing stories of our shared history that felt like fragments of a dream. But amid this outpouring of care, a jarring dissonance intruded. Kevin, accompanied by his parents, stormed in, their words dripping with disdain. "How long are you going to stay in the hospital? Do you know how much this is costing? Who do you think is paying for it? Get out as soon as possible. What a lazy wife you are. Get back to work. We're short-staffed because of you." Their cruelty stunned me, each accusation a fresh wound. My father, Ken, who happened to witness their tirade, was visibly shaken. Known for his gentle demeanor, he transformed in that moment, his voice booming with righteous anger. "My daughter is seriously injured. She's here because she needs to be. You heartless people have no right to speak to her like this." My mother and Jake rallied beside him, their voices unified. "Don't come back here ever," they demanded. That day, Kevin and his parents retreated under my family's fierce stance, but their visits persisted, each one marked by complaints about my hospital stay and the inconvenience I caused. Eventually, the hospital moved me to a private room, barring them from visitation, a small mercy offered at the same cost as a shared room, for which I was profoundly grateful. The test results confirmed what I'd begun to fear. I'd lost a significant portion of my memory. The diagnosis felt surreal, like something from a movie. The doctor initially suspected a traumatic brain injury, but scans showed no brain bleeding despite my head striking concrete. Instead, they attributed my amnesia to a psychological condition triggered by the impact, a protective response from a mind overwhelmed by stress. "I don't understand," I whispered. "I can't even remember my husband's face. I can't believe I was married to him." The reality was staggering. I'd been married to Kevin, a 35-year-old man who worked at his parents' store, while I held a job as a secretary at a separate company. We lived with his parents, a detail that felt suffocating even in its abstract retelling. My friend and coworker Betty filled in the grim details of my married life, her voice heavy with empathy. Kevin and his parents had controlled every aspect of my existence. They monitored my work schedule, confiscated my salary, and left me with no personal funds. On my days off, I was forced to work unpaid at their store, a family business that demanded my labor without gratitude. Household chores fell entirely on me, despite my full-time job. Kevin dismissed any request for help with sneering contempt. "Why should I do housework? Isn't that a woman's job? Don't push your work onto me." He hurled insults, useless, slow-witted, failure, blaming me for every minor misstep. His parents echoed his cruelty, nagging me about housework, my job performance, and my inability to conceive, denying me even the dignity of a proper meal. Kevin's daily drives to and from work weren't acts of care but surveillance, ensuring I didn't waste money or stray from their control. As Betty spoke, fragments of that fateful day surfaced, sharp and visceral. Kevin had been berating me in the car after a shopping trip, his voice a relentless assault. "You took so long, and now we're late for our appointment. What are you going to do about it, you slowpoke?" I'd protested. "It wasn't my shopping. I was getting something your mom asked for. If you'd helped, we'd have finished sooner." His response was venomous. "Don't make excuses. Every time I go out with you, I end up in a bad mood. I shouldn't have come." His tirade continued for nearly an hour. When we reached home, I moved to exit the car, but Kevin, still seething, shouted, "Hurry up and get out, you idiot!" With a forceful shove, he pushed me from the driver's seat. I stumbled, my head striking the concrete with a sickening crack. He didn't pause to help. He simply drove off, leaving me bleeding and unconscious. A neighbor's quick call to an ambulance saved my life. The memory ignited a fire within me. I contacted the police, recounting the incident with a clarity that belied my fragmented past. An investigation ensued, and security camera footage corroborated my account, capturing Kevin's assault in stark detail. My body trembled with rage as I vowed to make him pay for his cruelty. Though my marriage to Kevin still felt like a distant fiction, the physical toll was undeniable. Blood tests revealed severe exhaustion, my emaciated frame and brittle hair testifying to the relentless stress Betty described. After my discharge, I refused to return to Kevin's house, choosing instead the sanctuary of my parents' home. There, I was enveloped in love. "Meg, we made your favorite fried chicken today. Eat as much as you like," my mother said, her smile warm. "Your dad got a cake, we'll all share it later," Jake added, his teasing grin a balm to my soul. My mother's cooking nourished me, each meal a step toward recovery. My father and brother doted on me, their care a stark contrast to the neglect I'd endured. My workplace, understanding and supportive, granted me a leave of absence to heal fully. As my physical wounds mended, so did my spirit. My hair regained its luster, my skin glowed, and the fatigue that had once defined me faded. The transformation underscored the depth of my suffering in that toxic marriage. A sudden fear gripped me one evening. "Does being married mean I have to go back to that house?" I blurted, my voice small. My mother's eyes flashed with resolve. "No one would force our precious daughter to return to a place that hurt her. You should divorce him and cut ties immediately." After a family discussion, we enlisted a lawyer, a longtime friend of my father who'd known me since childhood. Outraged by my story, he took on my case with fervor, launching divorce proceedings with efficiency. Meanwhile, Kevin and his parents fumed at their home. "When is she coming back?" Kevin demanded. "The housework and store can't run without her." His mother added, "She's been discharged, hasn't she? Why isn't she here? She should be having a child, not resting." His father chimed in, "She's spoiled. When she returns, we'll straighten her out." Their daily calls to my parents' home were relentless, insisting I return to their business. Jake relayed their audacity, and my family unanimously agreed I'd never go back. Still, I needed my belongings, including critical evidence of their abuse. Accompanied by my father and the lawyer, I returned to that house, steeling myself for confrontation. The moment I entered, Kevin and his parents unleashed their fury. "How long are you going to stay at your parents' house? Why aren't you answering our calls? You're an irresponsible wife. Get back to work. There's a mountain of chores and store tasks waiting." Their voices overlapped in a cacophony of blame. As my father and the lawyer stepped in, their tirade faltered. "Why didn't you come alone? What's a lawyer doing here?" Kevin snapped. The lawyer, calm but firm, said, "Let's sit and talk." While they moved to the living room, I hurried upstairs to my room, my heart pounding. I retrieved my diary, a meticulous record of Kevin and his parents' verbal abuse, complete with dates and details. The lawyer had emphasized its importance as evidence. I also grabbed another hidden item, Kevin's medical test results, proof of his azoospermia, which I'd kept secret to spare his ego. As I packed, a loud bang echoed from downstairs, Kevin slamming his fist on the table, shouting, "Who agreed to a divorce? Don't make decisions on your own." My body tensed, a reflex honed by years of fear, and I crouched instinctively. The sound triggered a flood of memories, the full weight of their emotional abuse crashing over me. I grabbed my belongings and rushed downstairs, where Kevin blocked my path. "What's with the luggage? Aren't you coming back? Are you saying you want a divorce? Explain yourself." As he lunged toward me, the lawyer intervened. "Violence is unacceptable," Kevin protested. "I'm not violent. I just want to talk." Just then, the doorbell rang. "Yes, who is it?" My mother-in-law answered nervously. "We're the police. Is Kevin Davis home?" The officer's voice was authoritative. Kevin's full name hung in the air, and my mother-in-law's hands shook as she opened the door. "Which one of you is Kevin Davis?" an officer asked. "That's me," Kevin replied, his bravado faltering. "You're under arrest for suspicion of assault. Please come with us." My mother-in-law gasped and Kevin stammered, "Why me?" The police explained that my complaint, backed by security footage, had escalated to a criminal case. At first, Kevin went quietly, but as he was led away, he erupted. "I'm not wrong. It's her fault for being clumsy. I just pushed her a little. It's an exaggeration." "Meg, withdraw the complaint." His shouts drew neighbors to the scene, their whispers amplifying the family's disgrace. Ignoring my in-laws' pleas, my father, the lawyer, and I left, the weight of that house lifting with each step. We sent a certified letter demanding a divorce, citing the assault and ongoing emotional abuse. My diary, filled with dated entries of their cruelty, was irrefutable evidence. Voice recordings on my phone, nearly 100 in a single year, captured their verbal assaults over trivial matters, late dinners, unprepared baths, or minor store tasks. "It's 7 p.m. and dinner isn't ready? Why can't you do something simple?" My mother-in-law's voice sneered. "Stir fry again? You don't care about our health. You're a failure as a wife." Kevin's rants were equally vicious. "The bath isn't ready? I told you I needed it after dinner. You're slow at everything. Can't you do anything right?" Terms like useless, slacker, and slow-witted punctuated their tirades, each word a blow that had once made me shrink. The recordings, paired with Kevin's test results revealing his infertility, a truth I'd hidden to protect him, sealed the case. The divorce proceeded smoothly, their denials crumbling under the evidence. I also sued Kevin for emotional abuse and psychological domestic violence in civil court, determined to secure compensation and sever all ties. My in-laws, initially defiant, "Why should we pay?" We were teaching her to be a proper wife. Relented when faced with the recordings, fearing damage to their store's reputation. They paid above-market compensation, but their fears materialized. Rumors of Kevin's arrest and their mistreatment of me spread like wildfire. "Did you hear? The son from that store pushed his wife out of a car. They forced her to work for free while bullying her. Customers dwindled, and within 6 months, the store collapsed under a loan default, forcing them into bankruptcy. They now live in a modest apartment, reliant on welfare, their fate a distant echo I no longer heed." "Meg, want to go out for dinner tonight?" Ronald, my boss and now boyfriend, asks with a playful grin after work. "Stop it, everyone's still here." I laugh, blushing as colleagues tease us. "Oh, you two are so lovey-dovey," they jest. Ronald, unfazed, says, "I made reservations, let's go." A few years after Kevin's arrest, Ronald became my rock, supporting me through harassment from my ex. When Kevin ambushed me one day pleading, "Meg, let's live together again. I've changed." Ronald stepped in, his athletic frame imposing. "Stop bothering her," he warned. Kevin snapped, "This is between me and Meg," but Ronald stood firm. "Meg is important to me. Give up, or I'll call the police." Kevin hasn't approached since, likely intimidated by Ronald's strength and resolve. Ronald's love for sweets, a charming contrast to his tough exterior, and his respect for my opinions make him a partner I cherish. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.